Stephen A. Smith, Brian Windhorst, and Gilbert Arenas were on First Take discussing LeBron James' comments when he was asked about Anthony Edwards not wanting to be the face of the league. LeBron brought up Channing Frye, what he said about who would want to be the face of the league when the people who cover the game SHIT on everybody. Now, to be honest, I think that's what LeBron James is feeling about himself more than anything. I'll get into that as I react to these clips. With Anthony Edwards, on the other hand, to me, it's more about the responsibility. It doesn't seem like he wants to take on that. When he made the comments last year at the NBA All-Star game about, yo, we're just here to really have fun. We look at it as a break. I'm paraphrasing, but it was along those lines. He said the comments about Michael Jordan being the only skilled player in his era. And that speaks to his overall mindset that he admitted himself in the interview where he said, look, I just want to come and hoop. Again, I'm paraphrasing. I just want to hoop. Go out there, bust everybody on the court, lock this guy down, and then go home. And in that same interview, he explained how Victor Wembanyama is going to be the one who will be the face of the league. Without further ado, let's get into what these guys had to say, and then I'm going to react.
When I leave here today, the Uber driver will ask me about LeBron versus Jordan. The people at the airport will ask me about LeBron versus Jordan. When I'm in Abu Dhabi, when I'm in Shanghai, when I'm in Manila, people want to talk about that. But I do agree with LeBron on this. We are a little out of balance. The greatness of the modern game is not celebrated as much as it should. I am not arguing that we should not compare to all the other ages. It's part of what makes the sport enriching, but we are out of balance. The complaints about the night-to-night and the style of play are out of balance, and that includes our friends at TNT. In my opinion, they're out of balance. They should celebrate more. Monday night, just look at this week. Monday night, Zach LaVine, 42 points. Tuesday night, 151-148, Memphis Suns, one of the great games of the season. Wednesday night, Tyrese Halliburton, 33 points. He's, really hot right now. Thursday night, Steph has 56. LeBron, 33, 17, and 6. Every single night, the NBA is fantastic. Would you know that unless you are a hardcore fan? You would not.
First off, when Brian Windhorst was explaining his thoughts, I was wondering if he was specifically talking about just the media, the fans, or everybody in general, because on the fan side, they are the customers. If they have a complaint, you can't really get into it with them and tell them that they are wrong. They are the ones who are watching, buying tickets, your merchandise, coming to the games. So I brought this example up before. If you have an Amazon product delivered to your house and it's late a few days, maybe a few weeks, there's scratches on it, dents, it's still working. But those other problems, the fans are going to complain about, or the customers in this case. You can't just tell them, well, it's working and it still arrives, so just shut up and be happy. Nah, people will complain about that, and that's part of the reason why the NBA ratings are probably down. People have issues. Now, as far as the media itself, when he talks about inside the NBA, I've heard Adam Silver in another interview with Colin Cowherd say that, yeah, there's NBA partnerships and people within the NBA doing business who have an issue with how inside the NBA has been covering the NBA itself. My thing with that, and I push back on it, is when I watch them, I think they do one of the best jobs in celebrating the smaller teams that no one else will talk about. They will mention a random team in the West or in the East that's on a 5-6 game winning streak, or which players have stepped up, a rookie that nobody is necessarily talking about within the mainstream media. They do the best job to that when it comes to celebrating the whole NBA and not just focusing on the big markets or superstar players.
You go back and look, 2005, 6, 7, and compare it to now?
Yeah.
This game is way higher level being played. I don't know if you agree with me. I've heard you on your pod. Sometimes you don't always agree.
Time out. I've had enough of that. Wow. Effort matters. I'm certainly not trying to imply that a LeBron James or most players go out on the court and don't give effort. In between those lines, there's a lot to celebrate. I'm saying the sullying of the product. When are you going to take accountability for doing that to your own product? When I brought up the All-Star game, that doesn't play a role in you sullying your own product? When we used to lament load management, that didn't play a role in them sullying their own product? And the reason why, and this is the beauty that I love about this industry, I love the fact I'm not one of those cats that don't want former players. Oh, I want all of them on. I want the former players. I want the present players. I want you all on, because guess what? Those players are the ones telling us. You and I talked about this yesterday. It's the Hall of Famers. It's the champions. Yo, man, you held us to this standard. What you doing here? Give a damn how much the game has changed. In the end, between those lines, when it comes down to it, it comes down to it. You got to handle that. This is the criteria. The criteria didn't change. They're trying to get you to change it.
Stephen A. Smith is making some good points here. The points that he is making clearly indicates there's a huge culture shift that has happened in the NBA. You heard Brian Windhorst just at the start of that clip say the league and the skill is way higher than what it once was in 2005 or 06. I've always argued that it's not that the NBA today is significantly better in terms of skill. If it is, I don't think it's as big as what maybe a Brian Windhorst may believe. It's more about the philosophy and how the game is coached with the officiating now. Analytics, three-point shooting, spacing, there's more of an emphasis on that. As a result, they are looking for players to specifically excel in those areas as opposed to a post player playing slow. You know, I've made videos about this already. As a result, you're getting these high offensive games that looks like sometimes is way better, but in reality, that's not always the case. That's just my opinion. On top of that, when we talk about culture shift and you hear Stephen A saying the older players are trying to make sure that the newer guys are being held to the same standards that they had to go through in order to get the accolades and the acclaim that they have, and the players now are basically trying to change it, well, that shouldn't be a surprise, because whether for the better or for the worse, the NBA has become a very player empowerment kind of league, and I can make pros and cons to why that's good and why that may not always be a good thing. But when you look at the players, and Stephen A reported this as well, they said, look, the NBA is making so much money on this All-Star weekend, we're not getting a piece of that pie. We're just going to show up, kind of coast around, do what we have to do. This is why I brought up the Anthony Edwards thing. That's a culture. He's saying, look, we're not here to compete. We're just here to have some fun. And if you see MJ as the only good player in his era and then Kobe came eventually, you may not think you have a lot of high expectations or standards that you have to meet and carry on when it comes to the tradition of the NBA. As a result, you can see lesser quality. And I'm not saying that comes from Anthony Edwards. He's a competitor. I'm just talking about the mindset overall in this culture shift.
By the way, LeBron James, you ain't the only damn person they ask about with comparisons. Don't they ask about Isaiah? Don't they ask about Magic? Don't they ask about Steph Curry and whether or not he's the greatest point guard in the game? Didn't they ask about Russell Westbrook when he was averaging a triple-double and he was winning a league MVP? Haven't they looked at Kevin Durant and talked about his greatness? They did all of that. When you're talking about these players and how they're critiqued, and you're talking about nostalgia and what have you, you lean on the greats who elevated the game to compare to the future because the standard was established.
The face of the league used to be something that players wanted to be, because the standard of this rare Bugatti by the name of Michael Jordan, this pristine, elegant being, sits there. No one's going to touch it. So since no one's going to touch it, there's no point of arguing about who's the next one.
Let me break down what Stephen A. Smith and Gilbert Arenas are saying. It goes hand in hand, as well as my very early comments of this video where I said I'm going to get into why I think LeBron James really feels he's being mistreated unfairly when it comes to being the face of the league and getting a lot of criticism. On one hand, yeah, Stephen A's right. You have all these players who do get comparisons. It's not just LeBron James. But because of his own greatness, he will always be compared to the one who people think is the greatest, which is Michael Jordan. As a result, it creates this very, very polarizing arguments, especially online, where on one hand, you have people who think LeBron James is the greatest ever and they want to erase every single thing that Michael Jordan did. And on the other hand, I see people online who say LeBron James doesn't belong in any conversation whatsoever. It's just MJ, Kobe Bryant. Those are the two. And they'll go on to say he's the worst thing ever to happen to the league. My response to all of that is heavy is the head that wears the crown. There's a lot of greatness, a lot of accolades, money, whatever you want to mention that you think is a blessing LeBron James receives because he's the face of the league. So yeah, there's going to be days where it feels like everyone is just dumping on you and the players. It's just what comes with the game. I do, however, agree with Gilbert Arenas from this standpoint. Sometimes I think as fans who are trying to appreciate the culture, we will get too caught up in comparing everyone to Michael Jordan, and if nobody is MJ, then we will always have this sense of disappointment or feeling like, oh, you're not that good, you're not that great because you can't accomplish what this guy did, or he did this in the playoffs, why aren't you doing it? As a result, there is times where we could devalue the players and their own greatness and what they're able to achieve. Then what ends up happening is when somebody brings up a name like Charles Barkley, they talk about him not winning a championship a lot more than his actual skill set, which made him a Hall of Fame player on an NBA level.
The advent of social media has brought voices into the equation that have nothing to do with media. But these players don't have the decency to separate that from the media that's actually watching and covering the game. And then will use it as an excuse to go back and act like they have been victimized instead of listening to the game being celebrated. Tell me something negative has been said about Steph Curry. Take your time, I'll wait. Take Take your time out, wait.
Nothing.
Which is a point of contention amongst the other star players.
Fine.
Nothing.
Time out.
The
Exactly.
person who's chasing Magic Johnson.
Right.
Nothing.
That's right. Okay.
He gets to chase Magic Johnson without anybody throwing rocks at this.
But respond to what he just said, which is a point of contention to other players. But guess what? Then the media, who's fortunate enough to talk to the players, that gets this intel from the players and then puts it out there for the masses like the players asked you to, then get blamed by the same players for putting negativity out when they're the ones who did it.
A couple of things here. Number one, Stephen A is basically saying people like myself, independent media covering the game, are not actually celebrating it and more into criticism, drama, things that are not of the game, which is why I try my best to do videos where I'm breaking down footage, film, plays, things that I see, people coming off of pick and roll defenses. I have videos like that in my shorts and longer content as well if you go through. So I know for me, I try to do my part, man, not to be just someone who's looking for a bunch of drama. Lastly, Stephen A does bring up a good point where he mentions, all right, you got players who are complaining about Steph Curry not getting enough criticism. They report that to the media, and then when the media reports it to the masses, all of a sudden they're seen as negative. That is a very interesting paradox, especially since you have NBA players who are now making their own podcasts and critiquing the game and saying things that may not be favorable to their own peers. It is what it is. What do y'all see in all of this? Are the players going to criticize too much? Do we need more of a balance? That was something Brian Windhorst was really emphasizing if you watch the full clip in this exchange. Do you agree with Gilbert Arenas? We're comparing guys too much to Michael Jordan. As a result, nobody wants to live up to that expectation. Or are you looking at it the way Stephen A is saying the players are not giving enough effort, the culture has shifted, and he's trying to put more onus on what they have done wrong? Let me know in the comment section. Like, share, and subscribe. And as always, salute for listening. Peace.